The previous session we were discussing about inter-process communication method, that is semaphorus. Okay, so we completed with the two inter-process communication method. One is message queue, another one is semaphorus. So today we will discuss one more method of inter-process communication, that is shared memory. Okay, so altogether in this chapter we'll be discussing three inter-process communication methods. One is message queue, semaphorus, and shared memory. Okay, so coming to the shared memory, so here it is similar to your semaphorus technique. Okay, here also the process can there will be two or more process. They can share a given region of memory. Okay, so here in the this portion of memory or a segment of memory, that will be there will be keeping the data. Okay, there will be keeping the data, and these data which you keep on the segment of the memory can be used or shared by two or more process. Okay, and using that they can perform we can perform communication between the process. Okay, so this is one of the fastest process of inter-process communication, because the data does not need to be copied between the client and the server. Okay, you need not copy the data between the client and server. Okay, you can just need to keep the data on the shared segment of the memory. Okay, and the only trick is used here is the shared memory is synchronously access to a given region among multiple processes. Okay, so we have to make sure that the multiple processes have the access to this shared memory. Okay, and if the server is placing the data into the shared memory, okay, server is nothing but a process. Okay, one process is treated as a server. If it is placing the data into the shared memory region, then the client does not try to access the data until the server, that is the server process, is done with writing the data to that shared region. Okay, so this is to be taken care. So until the server process finishes writing to this shared memory, the client process, okay, cannot read the data. So here also we will be using the several structures and functions. Okay. Here the kernel maintains a structure with at least the following members. Okay, these are the members for each shared memory segment. Okay, you can see here this is the structure. Okay, similar to your semaphorus and message queue. Here also we will be having the structure. Okay, only thing is the name differs, and remaining everything is the same. Okay, definition is same. Okay. Here you can see these are the members we are having. So this indicates the permission. Okay. So this I already showed for message queue. What are the different types of permissions we are having? So same thing you can define here, like the permission includes mode, real user ID, effective user IDs, and all. And this indicates the size of the segment in bytes. Okay, we are telling that there is a portion of a memory segment which will be shared by the process, and what is the size of that segment in terms of bytes, maybe 200 megabytes or k bytes, whatever it is in terms of bytes. Okay, and this is a member which indicates the process ID of the last uh, operation. Okay, the last shared memory operation. So what was the process ID, and what is the process ID which created this shared segment? Okay, what is that process ID? Okay. And this member indicates number of current attaches. Okay, how many process is using this current shared memory? And similar to the other structure, here also we have time informations. Okay, so this time information includes last attached time, the last time this segment is created, and the last deattached time. And similarly, if there is any modification done, what is that time? Everything will be included here. Okay, so you can go through this. So this is about structure of the uh, shared memory. Okay. And here we will be having different functions. So first function, okay, first function here the name of the function is SHM, that is a shared memory get. Okay, so this function is called is usually it is used to get the shared memory identifier. So similar to the message queue identifier or semaphorous identifier, here also we need identifier, okay, an ID for further communication to perform any further operation. Okay, we need ID. So what is that function we are using? We need this header file. Okay, and here as we already studied that we need to include a key and that key will be converted into ID. So this is a key. Okay, that key will be converted into an identifier. So we need to mention the key. Okay, and along with that we'll be mentioning the size and different flags. Okay, so size is nothing but the minimum size of the shared memory segment. Okay, so after that, once you execute this function, uh, it will return the shared memory ID if it is able to create the shared memory segment, or else it returns -1 on error. Okay, and when a new segment is created, the following members of the structure are initialized. So what are the members will be initialized? So here this permission will be initialized. Okay, so it will initialize different permission IDs, and the mode member of the structure is also initialized corresponding permission bit. What type of permission we are having to this shared memory, or read permission, write permission, whatever it is, will be initialized. And along with that, these other members, what you can see here, IDs and all, so all these will be initialized or set to 0 initially when you execute this function. And this is that is this time will be set to the current time, and this field will be set to the size requested. Okay, so size requested will be set, okay, how much amount of size of the shared memory segment in bytes. Okay, so that is about the first function, shared memory get. Okay. And similarly, we are having uh, one more function, that is SM, that is shared memory control function. So this is a function that is used to perform various shared memory operations. Okay. So we have encountered this kind of function even in message queue and shared memory to perform different operations. Here also we have one for performing operations. So what are the parameters? We need the ID which you get from this. After executing this function, we get an ID. So that ID is passed as a first parameter. Okay. And apart from that, we need a command argument and a buffer pointer. Okay. So structure buffer pointer. So control operation returns 0 or -1 on error. Okay. And here this command argument specifies one of the following 5 commands. So what are the following 5 commands? So we have different commands here. So first one is IPC stat. Okay. So this is one command. So IPC stat is a command, okay, which is used to fetch the structure, whatever the structure we have mentioned here, right? So to fetch the structure information for the particular segment, and they are stored in the structure pointed by this buffer. So all this information, okay, all this information will be fetched, and where it will be stored? It will be stored in this particular structure which is pointed by this buffer. Okay, so that is used for fetching structure information. And similarly, the next one is IPC set. So IPC set is used for uh, setting the 3 fields, okay, from the structure pointed by the buffer. Okay, so they are used for setting 3 information. One is user ID, okay, group ID, and one more is mode. So this is similar to your semaphorous. There also we have studied this commands. Okay, so they are. This is second one is used for setting. Okay, effective user IDs, group IDs, and permission mode. Okay, and the third one is IPC RMID. So this is a third command. So third command, it is used to remove the shared memory segment set from the system. Okay, to delete the memory segment which is already allotted. Okay, that segment if you want to delete, we need to use this command. Okay. And similar to that, we have two more commands. Okay. So one command is shm lock. So this is a command that is used for locking the shared memory segment. Okay. The command can be executed only by the super user. Okay. And one more is similar to this SHM unlock. Okay, SHM unlock. So this command is used for unlocking the shared memory segment. And here also we need super user privilege. For this too, we need super user or root privilege. S2. Okay. So first one is to fetch the structure information, set the structure information, remove the allotted segment. This is for locking and this is for unlocking. Okay, and that information is given here. Those 5 commands. And one more command is, the third one is we are going to discuss is sh shared memory AT. Okay. So once the shared memory segment has been created, the process attaches to its address space by using this command. So why it is used? For the process attached to this address space. Okay. So once this shared memory is created, whatever the process that you want to use this shared memory need to uh, point to this particular address, correct? So server will create this. Okay, there is a process, server process. So server process will create this shared memory, and all other process, okay, which we call it as a client, need to point to this particular address. Okay, so or we call it as attaching. The process need to attach to this address space. So for that we are using this function. So function is having uh, ID, okay, the address as a pointer, and it is having a flag. So once it executes, the process executes this function, then what will be returned? The pointer to this shared memory segment will be returned. Okay. So once the client executes this function, that client process will be getting this a pointer pointing to this address space. After that, it can start using this data which is available in this shared memory. Okay. Now here we are having, we know about ID. Okay. We are having address here, right? So address in the calling process at which the segment is attached depends on the address argument. Okay. What type of address will be given? So address given also depends on this flag bit. Okay. So this flag bit is this. Okay. So this is a flag we are using. Okay, which is an optional. Okay, and suppose if this address bit is, if the address is 0, okay, if you are giving the value as 0, then the segment will be attached, the segment will be attached to the first available address selected by the kernel. Okay, so where this address will be, so this address will be at the first available address space. Okay, suppose if it is not 0, okay, and if it is not 0, if it is not 0, then it depends on this flag where to point. Okay, so yeah, that is what about this third function. Okay. And there is one more function. The identifier remains in its existence until some process Okay, upon the server specially removes it by calling control, okay, with the command, this command which we have already discussed. Okay. So this is a command we can use for deleting the address memory segment. This is one way of removing the memory segment that is allotted. Okay. Another way is going for this command, this function. So this is the fourth function. This is one way of deleting this memory segment. So memory segment, if you want to delete, we can go for this uh, function. For that, we have to pass the address of this memory segment. Okay, we need the pointer which is a pointer which is pointing to the address of this memory segment. Okay, so this address is a value that was written by the previous call to this method. Here we are getting this address. Okay, if successful, it decrement the SMT match counter in the associated here. Okay, here this will be, there is a counter here, okay, which will telling the number of current attaches. Okay, so here, for example, I said there are how many processes here pointing to that apart from server. There are 4 client process pointing to this shared memory, right? So this 4 process can execute this function. If they don't want to point, if they don't want to use the shared memory, they can execute this function SXMDT. So DT stands for DT stands for this one, detach. Okay, Det, detach it. Okay, detach it means for removing the pointer. Okay, removing the pointer. So once you execute this function, this pointer will be removed. Okay, so further this client process will not be pointing to this. Okay, so again, yeah, that is what for those are all 4 functions. So first function is for creating the shared memory, which creates the shared memory ID. Next one is used to perform different operations. And third one is used for pointing to the particular address by the client process. And the last one is for removing or detaching the client process pointer from pointing to the shared memory. So this is all about the shared memory. Okay. So the next topic is client server client server properties. Okay. So here we are going to discuss some of the properties of the client and server that are affected by the different types of inter-process communication that is being used between them. Okay. So we know that there are different inter-process communication. For communicating between the process, we can use different methods. Correct. For we can use 3 types of inter-process communication method: shared memory, semaphores, or message queue. And apart from that, we can also make use of concept of pipes. Okay, for inter-process communication. In that, we can also make use of pico pipe. There are different types of pipe. So this is one of the pipe we have discussed. So we can go for any of this method for communicating between the process or sharing the data between the process. Okay, so these are the methods we can use. So what is drawback or what is the advantages of going for this type of inter-process communication? So first one is we can go for creating between the client and the server. We can create one-way pipe. Okay, so one-way pipe can be, this is one of the technique that can be used for uh, communicating between the process. Okay, so that pipe which you create between the client and the server process can be used for passing the data between those two, okay, process in the both direction, not at the same time. Okay, so pipe can be used for sending only one direction data. And here, uh, yeah, so under pipe we have one arrangement that we call it as open server arrangement. So what is that open server arrangement? It opens a file for the client. Okay, so what the server will do? We have the server process, okay, and we'll be having multiple client process. Okay, what the client will do and server will do? Server will create a file. Okay, it opens a file for the client. Instead of client being opening the file and performing the open, so who will do the open? So if the client and the server want to share the file, what the server will do? Server will create a file or it will open this file, and what the client can do? Client can refer to that file content. Okay. We assume that the server is a set user ID program. Okay, giving it additional permission, root permission. The server uses real user ID of the client to determine whether to give it access to the requested file. So server will create this and open this file, and it will check its ID. Okay, it will check the ID of the client, okay, real user ID of the client, and based on that, it will decide whether to allow the client to access this open file. Okay. Here, the server is acting as a child. The server is acting as a child in this arrangement, and this all other process will be acting as a parent. So server is a child of a parent, which we use this. Server is a child of a parent. All the server can do is passing back the content of the file to the parent. Okay. This is one way, okay, one way of performing the communicating between the process, okay, between the client and the server process. Okay. So this way we can build a server that allows certain user permission that they won't normally have. Okay. So here, uh, one of the drawback of this method is this can work only for the normal files. Okay, normal files, the server can open the file and it can allow the other process to read the content of the open file. But it will not work for other files like device files and all. Suppose if you are going for other files apart from the normal file, like device files or any other special files, okay, you cannot go for this approach, that is open server arrangement. That is not possible. Okay, server sometimes may not have the access to that special files. Okay, so it cannot open the file. Client cannot give the permission. So this works only for the regular files. For special files, this approach doesn't work. So for that, other approach is you can go for a message queue, okay, which we have already discussed the approach of message queue, right? So here, what can we do is we can go for a message queue for communicating between the process. We know how what are the functions or what are the methods that is used under message queue. We discussed in detail, right? So that message queue IPC method can be used for communicating between the process. Okay. So what happens here? A single queue can be used between the server and all the clients. So you can create a client. You can have different client process. Client process. There is a server process. So we can go for a single queue. Okay, a single queue can be used, created, and this queue can be used by the all the clients for passing the messages. Okay. Now, using the type field of each message to indicate who the message is for. So, server can send the message to the client. Okay. So based on what? Okay, by using the type field. So, message is having different fields. Each message is having different fields. Okay. One of the field is type field. Okay. So there is one field here, the type field. So using that type field, you can tell who for which client the message is to be given, whether it's for the first one, second one, or the third one. So that is given by the type field. So type field, you can tell which message is indicating the what type of who is the recipient. Okay. For example, the client can send its the request with the type field of one. Okay, included in the request must be the client's process ID. So client should tell the process ID. Server then sends a response with the type field set to the client process ID. So what is this type field actually? So it is nothing but the client. Okay, there are different clients will be having different IDs. Okay, process IDs. Okay, for example, this is having 1, this is having 11, and this is having 12. Okay, so this is nothing but type is nothing but they are the process IDs. So every client will be having the individual process ID. That is what this type field. So based on this type field, suppose if it is 11, okay, suppose this type field is 11, then we understand that is for the second client. Similarly, if it is for 12, 12 means we understand that yes, the message is for the third client. Okay, so here type field is nothing but the client's process ID. Server receives only the message with the type field of 1. Okay, and the client receives only the message with the type field equal to their process ID. Okay, so this is how the communication happens between the server process and the client process based on their process ID. Okay, there is one more alternate approach. An individual message queue can be used for each client. So what we do is instead of using one single message queue here, we have only one single message queue, right? Instead of that, what we can do is for 3 clients, we can have 3 separate message queues. Okay, so if this is a server, if these are 2 clients, okay, for this is one message queue that is only for sending the message between this server and that this server and this particular client 1, and this is one more, okay, for sending between the server and client 2. So there are 2 clients means there are 2 message queues, okay, for each clients. So before sending the request to the server, okay, before client sends the request, each client need to create its own message queue. Okay. Server then has its own queue. Okay, and the client sends its first request to the server with using this own well-known queue. Okay, using that the client will send the request to the server. Okay, so this request must contain the message queue ID of the client queue. Servers then sends its first response to the client queue. Okay, and all our further requests and response are exchanged only using this particular message queue. Okay, so that is what is given here. Okay, so explanation is given here. So this is one approach is create a single queue. Another approach is create separate queue for different clients. Okay, so this is one way of exchanging the data between the client process and the server process. Previous one is using pipe. Okay, next one is using a message queue. Okay, so what is the disadvantage of these two techniques? Okay, so in this both the techniques, one disadvantage is using message queue can be implemented using, yeah, whatever the technique we have used here, message queue, this same thing can also be done using shared memory and as well as using Semaphorus. Okay, the problem is in the case of shared memory is that only a single message can be in the shared memory segment at a time. Okay, suppose if you are using shared memory technique, how many messages can be there? Okay, only one message, single message can be there in the shared memory segment at a time. You cannot have multiple messages, only one message. Okay, and similarly to the message queue with the limit of only one message per queue. Here also, what is the disadvantage? Suppose if there is a queue here, message queue, how many messages you can have here in this message queue? Only one. Okay, remember that. Even here also in the message queue, how many? Only one message you can have. At a time, only one message. Okay, so here one message and here one message. Okay. So that is a problem. Okay, so that is a problem in this IPC method. Okay, you cannot send or you cannot keep more than one message in the shared memory technique or in the message queue or even in the Semaphorus. Okay, so for that We can also go for one more method, that is uh, for client server communication, that is FIFO, first in first out, can also be used for the communication between the client and the server. So here client must create its own FIFO. Okay, FIFO is nothing but it is a pipe. Okay, FIFO pipe. The client must create its own FIFO and set the file access permission of the FIFO so that only user read and user writes are on. So what permission? Only two types of permission, read and write permission. Okay. We assume that server has a super user privilege, so the server can still read and write to the FIFO. How the communication takes place? There is a client. Okay. There is a server when client and server process. Okay, you create a FIFO file. Who will create? That is created by the client. Okay, client will create this FIFO. Okay, for exchanging any data. Okay, then server will make use of this FIFO. Okay, so for performing what kind of operation? Both read and write operation. So they can exchange the data using this FIFO pipe technique. When the server receives the first client's request on the server's well-known FIFO, so when the request comes, okay, when the request comes, which will contain the ID of the specific client-specific FIFO, the server calls either stat and fstat of the client-specific FIFO. Okay, so these are the two techniques, method, functions can be used. Server assumes that the effective user ID of the client is the owner of the FIFO, so it will understand that, okay, when the request comes, okay, it will understand that, the server will understand that, yes, this is the client which created this FIFO. This client is the owner of this FIFO. Okay. The server verifies that only the user read and write permissions are enabled. Okay, so that it has to check. Another, okay, as another check, the server should also look into this three time information. Okay, so this time information, when it is created, when this FIFO is created, when it is last modified. So all this time you should think to verify that they are recent. Okay, so why it has to check this time information? To check when it is created. Okay, whether it is old FIFO or whether it is been used for a long time. So we have to make sure that it is no older than 15 to 30 seconds. Okay, if it is the FIFO is created, uh, more, it is existing for more than 30 seconds, then you should not use. Okay, this is an example. Okay, so that is why the server need to check even not only the read and write permission, it also need to check these three time fields. Okay, so again, the drawback of this method is, okay, if a malicious client can create a FIFO with someone else as the owner, so what it can do? So this FIFO can be created. Okay, who will create? Some client will create. Okay, some client will create as a owner. It will create this FIFO and set the file permission to read and write only. Okay, but server failed to understand that this is not the owner. Okay, some other client has created. In that case, the system will fundamentally will have security problem. So while the server will start communicating with the client, okay, it has to take utmost care, okay, to make sure that it is a genuine client has created this FIFO. Okay, so it has to check all the security permissions before further communicating with the or further communication, sending the data between the client and the server. All the security permission need to be checked. Okay, otherwise the server may be communicating with some unwanted client. Okay, so this is the three approach. One is using open server arrangement. Okay, next one is using IPC method, that is message queue, and similarly we can use either message queue, shared memory, or Semaphorus, and the third one is using FIFO. So these are the three uh, things that we have discussed. Okay, are the properties of client server that are affected by the different types of inter-process communication. Okay. Next topic is this is a third chapter. Okay. Advanced interprocess communication methods. So here we are going to study the concept uh, of stream types. So these are the concepts we are going to study about stream pipes, passing file descriptors, open server version 1, and client server communication functions. So these are the topics. Okay. Uh, Comes under from here till end. It comes under the third chapter of module 4. So today we will discuss one topic. Okay, we will discuss this stream pipes. First topic. Okay. So here in the stream pipes, a stream pipe is a bi-directional pipe. So we have studied a simple pipe, right? So where there can be, when I introduce the pipe concept, there it was unidirectional pipe. Okay, so that means between uh, any two process, okay, communication can happen only at one time. Okay, so one is meant for writing, another one is meant for reading. Okay, so one process can go for reading, other process can go for writing. Okay. And here for that we had two file descriptor. If you remember, we had two file descriptor, FP0 and FP1. Okay. And here also we had two descriptors, FP0 and FP1. So these are the two process. This is one process and this is one more process. So this is process 1 and process 2. So P0 is used for reading, P1, this process is used for writing. Similarly, this is used for writing, means this is used for reading. Okay. So at a time, we cannot communicate, okay, in the case of simple pipe. But whereas if you go for stream pipe, it is bidirectional or full directional. Okay. So the only difference between, okay, there are two diagrams we are having here. To obtain bidirectional data flow between the parent and the child, only a single stream file is required. So to communicate between two processes, okay, we need how many pipes? We need only a single stream pipe. Okay. So we have two diagrams here. So here in this diagram, so difference is, okay, if you go through your previous diagram, okay, this diagram, if you go through the simple pipe, okay, and the one you can see here string pipe, the difference here is you can see here the heads, that is arrowhead in the both directions. Okay, you have arrowheads in the both the directions. You can see in this diagram also. In both the direction you have arrowheads. But whereas if you see your previous simple pipe, we had only one arrow. Okay, not both arrows. Okay, but here we have arrowheads on both the ends. So that is what we call it as a bidirectional pipe or full duplex pipe. Okay, so here both the direction you can perform read and write. Okay, FP0 can be used for read and FP0 can also be used for writing. Similarly, this is used for reading as well as for writing. Here, okay, the parent uses FP0 and the child uses, so this is a parent process and this is the child process. Okay, parent process uses FD0 and child process uses FD1. Okay, since each end of the stream pipe is full duplex, parents reads and writes. So using this FD0, it can perform both read and write. Okay, both read and writes. Okay, and even the child can also perform both read and write. So, that is about the bidirectional. That is what given here. So child can also use this FP0 and it can perform both input and output. So standard input for input writing or for reading. So this is a prototype that we use for creating, okay, prototype for creating string pipe. You can see here we are not using just pipe, we are using s underscore pipe. Okay, so how many descriptors we are using? Two descriptors. Okay, so ft 2 means, okay, that is two descriptors that we are using, 0 and 1. 0 is for parent, another one is for child. Two descriptors we are using for communication. Okay, so this is a syntax. So next is about passing file descriptors. So that we will see in the next class. Next session we will continue with this. So you have another 15 minutes. Okay. Continue writing the assignments, assignment and class test.